Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dig into a sermon that might just change the way you think about temptation, sacrifice, and the whole season of Lent. This comes from Pastor Paul Hulford of the First Congregational Church of Belding. It's his take on the first Sunday in Lent, and, well, it takes us on a pretty deep journey into the wilderness to uncover some really unexpected truths.
Okay, let's just jump right in. The sermon kicks off with this really powerful idea that, honestly, cuts through a ton of common guilt. Just look at this. Temptation itself isn't the problem. It's not the sin. It's the choice we make when we're faced with it that matters. And that simple distinction, it really sets the stage for everything that follows.
So what is Lent, really? I mean, for a lot of us, it's about giving up chocolate or coffee for 40 days, right? But this sermon is pushing us to think way, way deeper than that. And I just love this metaphor. It reframes Lent not as a time of just giving stuff up, but as a purifying fire. The whole idea is that it's this deep internal transformation, burning away all the junk that doesn't belong so we can be renewed.
Now, before we can even begin to tackle the whole temptation in the wilderness thing, Pastor Hulford says we absolutely have to understand the bedrock promise that God makes. And believe me, it is nothing like the kind of deals we're used to making in our own lives.
Yeah, this slide just lays it out so clearly. On the one hand, you've got our typical human agreement. It's quid pro quo. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours kind of thing. But the sermon points to God's covenant as something totally radical. It's not a deal. It's a one-sided, unconditional promise. God basically says, I'm going to do this because that's who I am.
And this, right here, this is the absolute foundation of the whole sermon. God's faithfulness doesn't depend on us getting it right. As the pastor puts it, you screw up, I'm still faithful. So with that unconditional promise as our anchor, now we can start to understand the story of temptation in the wilderness. Okay, so grounded in that promise, let's turn to the test itself. Those three famous temptations Jesus faced out in the desert.
So the test comes in three parts, and each one seems to target a really core piece of our human desire and our faith. And Jesus' response to each one? Well, the sermon frames it as more than just a historical story. It's like a roadmap for our own spiritual lives.
So the big question is, how do these ancient tests from thousands of years ago actually connect to our lives right now? Well, the sermon draws this direct line, translating each temptation into a modern struggle I think we can all recognize. These are timeless battles with our need for control, our need for validation, and our need for status.
The first one, turning stones into bread, it wasn't really about being hungry. It was about proving self-reliance. It's that urge to say, I got this. I can do it all on my own. It's that deep temptation to just take control and satisfy our own needs without ever relying on anyone else.
And right there, that's the heart of the struggle. The sermon makes this powerful argument that we were actually created for community. And this radical independence that our culture values so much, it's really just an ego-driven lie that Lent is specifically designed to burn away. Then you have the second temptation, throw yourself from the temple. I mean, what was that? It was a dare. It was a demand for proof, a test designed to force God's hand and just wipe out all doubt. It's that deep desire to have a faith that requires no faith at all, a cry for some kind of external validation.
Wow, what a powerful challenge, right? This goes right at our need to have God all figured out, to somehow fit the divine into a neat little box that we can understand and control. The sermon is calling us to actually embrace mystery, to embrace trust, even when we can't see the outcome.
And that brings us to the final temptation, the offer of all the kingdoms of the world. This is the big one. It's the lure of power, of status, of hierarchy. It's that all-too-common belief that our importance is measured by how many people are below us on the ladder. And this is what's called the great reversal. The sermon points out that Jesus just completely flips our concept of power on its head. True greatness, real importance, it isn't found in authority or influence, but in humility and in serving other people.
So if the wilderness is this place where we have to face all these intense struggles, why on earth would we ever choose to go there? Well, the sermon wraps up by explaining the ultimate purpose behind this really difficult journey.
And this just brilliantly illustrates the paradox, doesn't it? The wilderness isn't about punishment. It's the space we actually need for that purifying fire to do its work. It's where we get to shed our ego, our need for certainty, and our lust for power, so we can find out who we truly are underneath it all. And the sermon leaves us with this final
really challenging question. It forces you to look inward and ask yourself, why am I on this journey in the first place? Is it for the reward at the end, or is there something valuable in the journey itself, no matter where it leads?
Because in the end, the journey through Lent, as this sermon frames it, isn't really about what we lose, but what we find. It's a 40-day return to our most foundational identity, an identity that's grounded not in our own strength or certainty, but in the unwavering, unconditional promise of God.